This is a ManeHustle Media podcast. Hey y'all, welcome to Militantly Mixed, a podcast about race and identity from the mixed race perspective. I am your host, Sharmane, aka MixedGirlMane, and this is episode 54, which is going to be a very unusual episode. First of all, it was not planned, completely impromptu, and I was going to take up 0 on this week because of faulty audio. But I managed to scrape something together literally hours before this episode is meant to go live. So let me tell you what's going on. This week's episode was supposed to be with Susan Rios, a psychoanalyst of mixed race heritage. She and I have been talking for the last month or so about her coming on the show and, talking about mixed race, but also talking about her field of psychoanalysis and how race has only just barely begun to be a part of the conversation in her industry. And we had this awesome conversation. Well, we've had a couple of awesome conversations, but the one that we recorded for the sake of the episode was an awesome conversation. Unfortunately, the entire episode sounds like it's underwater. I have a little bit of a clip to share so that you can tell how bad it is. The content was so good, but throughout the whole thing, it's very garbled. And the weird thing was when I was recording it, it sounded normal to me. There was only a couple patches in which it kind of sounded a little garbly, which tends to happen because I record my interviews via online and sometimes bandwidth issues and other things come into play. And so sometimes there is drops or garbles and things like that. But while we were recording, I didn't pick up any of that. I only picked up a couple areas. So in playing it back, though, when I was preparing this episode, it is just not salvageable. It goes beyond whether or not you have talent to salvage it. Once a file is recorded poorly, it just is recorded poorly. And unfortunately, this is what happened on Skype that day. Luckily, it hasn't happened to me too often. It's only happened a couple times, but it's unfortunate that we've lost such good content. But I did reach out to Susan. She's aware of it. And we are going to get back together later on in the summer to re-record and try to capture some of that magic back, but also share this perspective, which is just unique to the show. We have not had this perspective yet, which is what I fucking wanted to share. It's unfortunate. So I actually have already recorded I'm taking the 0 today kind of episode. It was like an 11-minute episode in which I was bummed out about losing the file or not losing the file, but losing the chance to share the file because of the poor quality and everything like that. I was also in a shitty mood most of today. I got in a little bit of an argument earlier today that kind of set the tone for my whole day, but I ended up taking an accidental 2-hour nap and then had an ice cream sandwich after, and my whole mood changed and I got in a better mood. So I was still going to put out this week's a fail, but we'll come back next week episode. And then my husband decided out of nowhere to finally be ready to share his mixed race story with the audience. And that's why this episode's going to be so unusual. What is unusual about it is that my husband, although ethnically of mixed race heritage, did not know that until we were about 17, 18 years old. And then I basically take the ball and run with it throughout our early adulthood, trying to figure out where his biological family, his other half of his family was, so that we can learn about his other culture. So he walks through the world with a mixed race face, but a white person's experience. And it has taken me many years to come to terms with the fact that my husband identifies as white. Because I'm the mixediest mixed person on the planet. And more than that, I am so immersed in the black side of my culture that the idea that I ended up with a white boy has always kind of been a little bit of let's say it's like a scratch in the back of my head. There are times when it bothers me that this is what happened, but it just so happens that this is the dude I fell in love with. If you've heard me on other episodes, I am bisexual and polyamorous, so we have a lifestyle that affords us the opportunity to have relationships with other people, romantic relationships with other people, which we both have had, sometimes separate, sometimes shared. But ultimately, Tree is my person. He's the person that I love the most. including friends and family and every other human on the planet, he's the person I love the most. He's the funniest person I know, and he's the only person I'm comfortable living with. And believe me, we have tried to live with other people before. We have shared space with a partner before, and we've also shared space with a exchange student before. And I don't fucking like people. I don't like to live with people. I'm the weirdest polyamorous person because I hate people, and yet I don't like the restriction of one partner. Whatever. So my husband and I have been together since we were 22 years old, but we met when we were 15. And he was a friend of a really close friend of mine that I grew up with, but I moved away and came back, and that's how my husband and I met. In high school, I was not attracted to him or interested in him in that way at all, but he was the funniest person within our friend group, and he was the person that I would go home and tell my aunt, man, I wish I was attracted to Tristan because he's so funny. Like, he's the funniest person I know. And I guess humor and goofiness goes a long way with me, which you'll hear later in the episode. So I've always adored him, but I just wasn't attracted to him. And then when we were about 20, 21, he had just come off of a surgery and he was playing football for the college that we went to. And so he like bulked up. He's still skinny, but he's like a skinny muscular. And all of a sudden I found him cute. Whatever, I ended up eventually finding him attractive, but by that point he had already moved on and was interested in other people, and it took another couple years and we eventually fell for each other, and we've been together ever since. But when we got together, he still viewed himself, well, he still does, he views himself as a white person, and I've always viewed him as a mixed race person from the day that I met him. I had been harassing him to try to figure out what his ethnic background was, because he does not code as white. He does not look like a white person to me. He's pale, but he has a face that indicates there's something other than Anglo going on there. And it wasn't until we were 18 that we found out he had a different biological father than the brothers he grew up with. That he was biologically connected to his mother, but the dad was his adopted dad, and that he did actually have a different biological father. So we discovered that when we were like 18, 17, 18, and then when we were about 21, 22, we actually found out what ethnicity his biological father was, which set me on a path to try to seek out his father, because I was a little disturbed that he didn't have access to his other culture, his other half of the family. And so we get into it a little bit. So this episode is me and my husband talking about his mixed race identity really through me. So I kind of force him to be mixed. But it was fun to record, and honestly there's a couple of little things that he said that was a little different than we've talked about before. So it was interesting for me as well. But before I jump over to that, I got to do my little announcements. For those of you who don't know, I launched a new show on the ManeHustle Media Podcast Network called Bi Furious with MixedGirlMane. It is a show that covers LGBTQ plus issues from the POC perspective. We have 2 episodes out so far, so if you are interested in that kind of topic, the show will cover all kinds of queer issues and polyamory, mostly through the POC lens, because I am a person of color. So check us out there, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. As you know, Militantly Mixed is a fan-sponsored podcast, and with your support, it really helps keep us going and growing. We have recently gotten a few extra sponsors via Patreon, which has been amazing, and I'm so fucking grateful for it right now, given my current financial situation. To know that the show is going to keep going on is because people are paying for it to exist is overwhelming and really helpful. So if you'd like to sponsor the show, you can go to patreon.com/militantlymixed. I still owe y'all the full discussion between Javi and I about the anniversary episode on Patreon. I have been working on it, but there's been a lot of life happening over the last couple weeks. So it is a week late, but it is going to get up on Patreon soon so that the folks that sponsor the show will have access to that exclusive content. That'll be out soon. And the other way that you can sponsor the show is to go to paypal.me/militantlymixed. And that you can kind of view that as a tip jar. Did you like the episode? Did you like what we're doing? Drop us $1, $5, $10, whatever you wish. It's not a commitment like Patreon. With Patreon, you are committing to a monthly sponsorship. But basically, podcasting, while it is free entertainment to receive, there's a lot of cost involved, and it's something that we create because we're passionate about it. But ultimately, it is also how we would like to live. And if we can start receiving sponsorship from folks that are ingesting the entertainment, it helps us keep going and growing. Sponsorship really, really helps. So if you'd like to support us on a monthly basis, please go to patreon.com/militantlymixed. and get access to swag and exclusive or early content. And if you just want to drop us a tip and let us know that you like the content and it's speaking to you, you can go ahead and go to paypal.me/militantlymix. All donations are super duper helpful. Imagine if everybody who listened to the show even dropped $1, it would revolutionize this whole game. All right, enough of that. Don't forget to follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Militantly Mixed. And on Facebook right now, we've got something really interesting going on that I've never done before, but we're trying it out. If you're familiar with the episode from, I believe it was late November or early December, the Mostly White novel with Allison Hart, she was a guest on the show where she talked about her novel, which is about 4 generations of mixed race women of Black, Native American, and Irish American descent. She and I talked about that last year, and then I met her in person back in January when she had a speaking engagement here in Southern California. I decided to start a summer reading club. We're only going to tackle the one book this summer. I'll pick different books for the future, but we're going to start off with Mostly White, which makes sense because Allison Hart was my first author that I've gotten to speak to on the show. We're going to cover the book in parts. So we're going to read and discuss part 1 over 2 to 3 weeks because it is a long section, and then part 2 over 1 week, and then part 3 over 2 to 3 weeks because it is another long section. And what it makes our summer reading club different from every other summer reading club I've ever heard of is that the author is actually participating in the discussion. I didn't ask her to do it. I didn't even tell her I was going to do a summer reading. I just put it up on the page and was like, yo, I want to read this book with people. I want to hear how mixed race people respond and feel about this book. So, because I had already started reading it beforehand and everything, but I'm rereading it for the sake of this thing. We've got a few people who have signed up to participate. We were waiting for their books to arrive so that we can get started. But I think at this point, the folks who have already ordered it should have it by now. And for those of you who are hearing about this for the first time, you still have time. We're going to leave the discussion threads on the Facebook page open for a while so you can engage throughout. And the author is going to be there to answer questions if you have it, but also to participate in the discussion. Primarily, I'm not putting the burden on her to do it. She actually just reached out and said she wanted to do it, but I'll be leading some discussion points, and anybody who wants to participate, please go to the Facebook group on Militantly Mixed and actually engage on those threads. I can't pin all 3 of them because I don't know if Facebook allows me to do that, but you can search within the things and you'll see there's a part 1 thread, a part 2 thread, and a part 3 thread. We're going to take the whole summer to read it, so you got time. You can pace yourself. Please participate. And more than that, support a mixed race content creator. This woman wrote a book that is entirely about the mixed race experience. And more than that, it's a narrative. It's a fictional story, a fiction about mixedness. We don't have a whole lot of that going on. It's what I love about it so much. It is such a good book. There's pain and heartache in it. There's empowerment and positivity. There's a lot going on, but it follows 4 generations of mixed race women, and I think y'all should read it. So you can get it on Amazon, but even better if you can find an independent or local bookstore that you can order it from. That way you're putting money directly into your community, and especially if it is a person of color or a woman of color owned bookstore, that's another way of investing in your community. But let us know that you got the book and let's start talking about it. I will put links on how you can access the book and to the Facebook discussion group in the show notes this week. Is that everything that I have to announce? I think it is everything that I have to announce. But without further ado, allow me to introduce you to my husband, Tristan. All right. So my guest today, in lieu of Susan Rios, who was supposed to be my guest today, but as you heard earlier, the file was damaged. I am going to speak with my husband. Oh, I don't call you by your name on the show. Do you want to be called by your name on the show?
Tree?
I call you Tree. I don't call you...
You can call me Tristan.
You don't mind?
That's my name.
I know, but I started my show. I just talked about you. I don't tell people who you are so they don't Google you.
Oh, yeah. I hate being Googled. That shit hurts.
Dumb. All right. So today we're going to be talking with my husband, who I refer to as either Tree or Professor Tree on my various shows. He has been a guest on Blurred Comics, but today we are going to talk about his mixed ass self, which is essentially mixed non-mixed.
Is that how you think of me?
Well, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience, tell everybody what you are, and tell them what your ethnic heritage is.
Hi, my name is Tristan. My name is Tree.
You can call yourself whatever you want.
My ethnicity is white and Middle Eastern, and yeah,
specifically Palestinian and German.
Palestinian. I don't actually have a lot of German in me. Remember?
Yeah, I guess so. That's true.
Hold on, we could look it up.
Oh, we're gonna go to the ancestry.com.
Ancestry.
He grew up believing he was just a white kid of German ancestry, but we discovered later in life he was raised by a person that wasn't his biological father, and that his biological father was in fact Palestinian.
Right.
And so
but I just thought I was a white boy.
Yeah, you just thought you were a white boy.
Because my mom is white and my dad is white.
And your two brothers are white?
And my two brothers are white.
But him and his sister are brown.
My sister is brown, and I thought that her and I tanned. This was when I was a kid. That I thought that her and I tanned because she and I were born in Oklahoma, and my parents and everybody else was born in Texas. So I thought that's why we got brown in the sun, and my family got red and burnt and
pink.
And skin peeled off of there, which I always envied.
What do you mean you envied it?
I wanted to be able to peel sheets of skin off of me. It was cool.
So weird.
It was so fun.
Can we just first point out that you thought Oklahoma was the place what made you brown?
Yes. I was a dumb child. I was a very dumb child. I didn't have what you would call smart.
You did not have what you would call smart. So
okay, wait. So this thing is telling me Germanic, actually.
Yeah, I remember that. It also had like French and other shit.
Okay, so
like a lot
41% Middle Eastern, 26% Germanic, 11% Italian, 10% English, Welsh, and Northern Europe. Sorry, not Wales. And then Turkey, 7%, France, 5%.
Yeah, so like most white Americans, it's a hodgepodge of whiteness.
Yes.
And then you got the Middle East. Only 41% Middle Eastern?
Yeah, I know.
That's weird because they legit think they're 100% pure Palestinians.
Oh, they're from the line of the prophets.
They're from the line of the prophets. All right. So this is going to be a very strange episode because we're talking to a person of mixed race heritage who did not grow up with any cultural connection to his heritage, but basically from adulthood has had to realize that people view him as a person of color-ish.
Yeah, I think they just get it wrong.
Well, I mean, I think it's okay to say culturally you are a white boy.
I think that's
even
accurate.
though that's hard for me to deal with.
Yeah.
But
you love your white boy.
Oh, God. I have a reputation.
I know you
to
do.
Uphold. So, for a little history and background on Trey and me, we met when we were 15 years old when I moved back from Long Beach to Sacramento and started hanging out with my childhood friends, and one of them being Leonard, whose best friend happened to be... Did we say your name? I don't remember if we called you.
Me. Tree.
Tree.
Yeah.
I don't call him Tree to his face. I call him Tree on the show, which is weird.
Leonard's sidekick.
Yeah.
In high school.
I start hanging out with Leonard again, and over the course of high school, we become like the Three Musketeers, and we're around each other quite a bit.
Yeah, and I remember seeing you for the first time and being just like, the fuck your face? Like, what is all that?
What is all that going on with my face?
Yeah, I was definitely... Did I just like... I don't remember.
You didn't speak to me for almost the entire year. No, that first year that we literally hung out around each other, you did not speak to me.
Yeah, it's called fear. Sharmane put off a very don't come talk to me vibe.
But I was hanging out with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You were sitting in the cafeteria. That's not hanging out.
All right, sure.
Yeah.
But eventually we ended up having a class together, and that's why we started.
Yeah, because I sat next to you.
Yeah, because I was so cute.
Yeah, probably. And mysterious.
I was very mysterious. I wore sunglasses in high school.
Fuchsia lipstick. Oh my.
So my mom gave me fuchsia lipstick.
No, I had a thing for that fuchsia lipstick.
You liked it? You've been making fun of me for that.
Of course.
Lipstick forever.
I was just joking.
Oh, Jesus. All right.
Sharmane can't tell when I'm lying or not, y'all.
Yeah. After 29 years, I still can't figure out when he's lying. The first time.
MixedGirlMane can't.
No, I'm Sharmane. I'm
You're
Sharmane, a.k.a. MixedGirlMane.
Oh, okay, Sharmane.
You're the only one whose identity I protect because you didn't sign up for this job. I did.
Oh, I don't need
I'm
protection.
respectful of your protection.
I'm Tristan.
So in high school, I remember, if not one of our first conversations, definitely an early conversation, which I asked you what you were. Because as a mixed person, I'm always trying to figure out what people are. And you didn't look like a white boy. And you told me you were white. And I told you, no, you're not.
And you got it wrong.
No, I didn't. I got it right.
It's a very interesting question whether or not you got it right. Because I'm. It's not like I have any ties whatsoever to my Middle Eastern ethnicity. I have zero ties.
Right. But when I was talking to you, I was going off of your face.
Yeah.
And your face was telling me you were not a white boy.
But does a person's face tell their race?
I mean, in my case, it doesn't, because what race would I be?
It's definitely not.
I'm very racially ambiguous, but you looked like you were not white.
Yeah, but I am.
I mean, yeah, I basically understood that you were half white and half something else, and you were just closed-lipped about it. And then I finally meet your mom, and his mom's a regular old white lady, and I'm like, all right, so is dad something?
She's anything but regular, but okay.
And then, shut the fuck up. And then I finally meet your dad, and I'm like, all right, your dad's white, but you and your sister are brown. You and your sister are adopted, and nobody told you. That's what I decided.
Yeah, you nailed all that.
I basically decided you were adopted and or switched at birth, and nobody told you.
And I did not know at this point that I was adopted. My sister knew, and she had been keeping it secret, but my parents decided not to tell me.
I think they thought you knew.
How?
Because your sister got mad at you and told you when you were 12 and you forgot.
No, I don't think that happened until later.
No, she said you were 12 and your brother was 11.
Yeah, but I didn't trust my sister to disseminate truthful information in a fit of rage. She said that in a fit of rage, and so I didn't believe her at that time.
And so all throughout high school, I'm asking you, what race are you? What race are you? What race are you? I'm actually arguing with you about you not being a white person.
Yeah.
And saying that you have it wrong because I'm mixed and I'm the fucking mixed expert and I see mixed and I know
you
mixed.
You was an expert all the way back then.
I was.
Yeah.
I was like, I sniffed it out. And it wasn't until were we actually in senior year or we were in first year in college where you and I are together and you go, oh, what did you say to me? You were like, oh, guess what? You know what? I am something else or something like that. You were like, your mom had slipped it out some kind of way.
No, so blew up again at some point and said it. And then I got in an argument with my dad and I said.
Well, that was years later, though. That was after we already knew. The time you got in an argument with your dad, you and I already knew.
Nope. This is how I found out. I said to my dad, you're not even my real dad. As a shot in the dark. And he said...
Oh, this is a different fight.
He said... Yeah, this is a different fight. He said, the way you're acting right now, I wouldn't want to be.
Right.
And that's when I realized for the first time, oh. And then I think I found an adoption certificate from him in the safe when I was looking for his gun. Because guns are cool.
Where were you looking for his gun?
There doesn't need to be any further questions about that. Yeah.
Okay.
It definitely wasn't a suicide attempt or anything like that. It was just looking for a gun.
Why did you say it that way? Now I think it was.
Well, it was a failed attempt then. It wasn't. It was just guns are cool. I wanted to see his Beretta.
And so you discovered the adoption papers then?
Yeah.
Do you remember how old you were? Because definitely in high school.
17?
But at some point you and I had the discussion where you clarified, you discovered you did have a different biological father. But at that point we still didn't even know what race your father was.
My mom didn't know. Like, my mom used to tell me about this guy who knew judo and always drank milk. and that they were at a bar one day and some people were like messing with him and he could have beat them all up, but he walked away. This was like the lesson I got from my mom when I was like a little kid. She told this story all the time. That was the only story she told of.
So she would tell you a story of your father without telling you it was your
father without, yeah. And that's why I got put in judo.
That's weird that she was trying to make ways to connect you to him.
He was in the Olympics for Kuwait. Judo for Kuwait.
Right.
But so she thought he was Kuwaiti. And so I had been going around probably for years saying I was half Kuwaiti.
Right. When it finally came out casually that your father was of Arabic descent, Kuwait was the country he was from.
Yeah.
So we would say you were Kuwaiti at that point to people who identified you as non-white or mixed or something like that.
Yeah.
And including at the time, I had a really close friend that was Arabic too. And so their family validated your face by saying you had Kuwaiti eyes.
Yeah. And they got it wrong too.
They got it wrong also. It's not until years later that we're together at this point and I start looking for him. Your sister tells me as we're about to leave her house, she shows me his name and his phone number.
Yeah.
And so I start looking him up and we end up finding him. And so we eventually did meet him and everything like that. And that's actually, it's because of the way I found him. When I did research, I discovered that he was actually from Palestine and not from Kuwait, that he was a refugee to Kuwait as a child.
Right.
And so now we already learned you're a different race, and then we learned you were a different race.
Not race, nationality.
Ethnicity.
Nationality? I mean, we're talking about Kuwait and Palestine.
Yeah, but they consider themselves different.
Races?
I mean, yeah, they're all of Arabic descent, but there's just
this is how little I know of this stuff.
Yeah, he's not. He's not into it either. And you don't do any kind of exploration into it either. Like, it's not your deal.
I have no interest in these type of things. I have interest in the philosophy of space and time and mathematics and shit like that.
And then you end up devoting your life to the most mixed and racially focused person on the planet.
Yes, devoted.
Fuck you. I hate you so much.
Relax. You okay?
No, I'm fine.
But it just hasn't. Maybe it's that white in me. It just hasn't impacted me at all.
Well, yeah, I think it is the white with you. And honestly, like you growing up walking around with two white parents, until you come across someone like me, no one probably ever confronted you on this issue at all. Like, you have any childhood memories of someone saying, "What are your kids?"
Zero. My dad didn't know what I was.
I know. That's so
crazy. My dad and my brother both fought in wars.
The Gulf War and the second Gulf War.
And so they don't like Middle Eastern people.
Nope.
And I remember my dad saying basically saying racist shit. And they were talking about people that had the same ethnicity as me. Mm-hmm. And it hurt me, but it later on, like reflecting, it was like, I'm really not those people. I'm genetically linked to them, but I have no cultural ties to them whatsoever.
Yeah, but there's also something weird about racism where are we mad at the culture of a person, or are we mad at the skin?
What I'm saying is I didn't feel attacked, but I think I pretended to feel attacked.
I see.
Like they definitely weren't attacking me. But because I had the same ethnicity, I felt like part of that group when I really am not.
I mean, you are, you're not. You're not, you don't have connection. You're genetically tied or whatever. And I still think it's fair to be concerned about racism to groups that you're genetically tied to, even if you're not.
I mean, we should be concerned about genetic groups we're not tied to as well. I'm really worried about in-group, out-group bias type stuff.
But the reason why I say it's specific to the ones you're tied to is because these are people you're living with who have actually been involved in wars against people who are
people
of the same ethnic group of you. So what does that mean for them when even though they love you as their son and their brother, what does that mean for them in these racist moments? Where would eventually their loyalties go? You as their child and brother, or
And
you
see, this is
as a
one of those-
person of Middle Eastern descent?
This is one of those things I was thinking about, though. Is it that they're, see, like, what race is so nebulous and unclearly defined, right? In mathematics, shit is just perfectly defined, it's right, but race is just not clearly defined. It's some sort of combination of ethnicity and cultural. I'm not sure what the fuck it is.
Yeah.
But it seemed to me that they weren't, that my dad and brother weren't like hating on my ethnicity.
Yeah.
Right? Otherwise they would hate me, but they love me. So they must have been hating on the culture or some other. I mean, they went to war, so they're filled with propaganda against these people.
Right.
Right? You can't love your enemy and still want to kill them or harm them or condone that stuff. So I think sometimes what people hate about other people or is viewed as racism is really about the culture, is as a culturism. Not,
maybe
not the ethnicity. I don't hate your ethnicity. I hate your culture.
Well, I think in particular in your case, because you are a paler version of a Middle Eastern person.
That's because I stay out the sun.
That while you do code Middle Eastern in your face, your skin tone is a lot lighter. And
you've never seen me tan, huh?
No, I've seen you darker.
Tan?
No, I have.
We should do it.
But you should. But what I'm saying is that for them, it's less about skin tone also because you're not as dark as full Middle Eastern folks or majority Middle Eastern folks or whatever. But like a racist person who's against a black person, it is a combination of what they look like and possibly culture, or it is just what they look like in some cases. Like I think racism is very weird.
Yeah, it's very.
It just depends on whatever is the random ass thing you've decided to hate. And I think
I'm not saying it's not tied to ethnicity at all.
Yeah,
it's definitely tied to it. Like, like we talk about like Eminem, right? He's culturally black. He's got a lot of cultural black influences in him.
Right.
You would never call him black though.
No.
Ever.
I mean, he's not mixed.
It doesn't matter how much. Well, maybe like how much, if he does have any roots in Africa, like if he has any ethnicity that is, he's still
white. Yeah.
Widely, like, not going to consider him black.
Yeah.
So obviously, a race has something to
do with it. Like in my case, because I have facial features that are linked to my black side, even though I'm yellow, black people can tell I'm black and they treat me like I am black even though I'm lighter skinned.
Yeah. I think of you as half black, half Japanese.
Yeah.
Because you have
the cultural
you have ethnicity in both, large amount, and you have the cultural upbringing of both.
Yeah.
And so it makes 100%. And you do have some British upbringing, but it's just tea.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, tea's the big thing that I carry, but there's different things. There's humor and stuff like that
but
too.
I grew up in England. So
which I kind of think of us both as British, because I have a British family member that turned me that way, and you grew up there.
Yeah.
Even though you don't have the ethnic, not necessarily, you don't have the.
I have 10%.
But you weren't raised thinking of yourself as English. You were raised thinking of yourself as American living in England. And
yeah, because we fought the English little kids. We hated them and they hated us. They were bad guys. I thought that when we got to America, because in England when I was growing up, right, we lived on a military American military base, and it was like Americans versus English.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought when we got to America, it would be like, oh yeah, harmony, because we're all Americans. Mm-hmm. And then I got here and got headbutted by the first American that thought I had a quote unquote faggy British accent.
Excellent.
Yes. So yeah, I got a lot more fights here than there.
you couldn't win. You're a Yank in England, and here.
Yeah, because I had the accent, man. You couldn't get that accent out.
It's funny too. I make fun of him because he's got the worst British accent ever, and he grew up there.
cannot do a British accent.
But it obviously influenced you in some kind of way that someone detected your accent when you were a kid.
When I was a kid, I had the accent thick. That's how I talked. Everybody talked that way.
But your videos, I saw your kid videos. You didn't sound like a Brit there. You sounded like an American kid.
Did I? We could go back to those videos. Got to break out the VHS.
Your brother, though, with the 1 pence, 2 pence, please, mommy.
Yeah.
He definitely sounded like, but he was a lot younger than you.
Yeah.
So I guess what's kind of weird about us is that I force you to have to, not force, but just by nature of who I am and the things I talk about, you're kind of in positions to talk about race or think about race.
Yeah, we talk about it a lot. And it is important to me. It's just not important to me. It's important, like, in terms of
into
social
the world,
justice,
social world, yeah.
But my life has been impacted almost nothing compared to what I've seen other people's lives impacted by their race. I can't think of a single time I have overtly been the victim of racism. I can't think of a single time where I saw it happen. And you and I disagree about that one case. But
right.
Even if that case happened, it's still negligible.
It didn't affect you the way.
I went to the airport. I had a beard at the time,
full
which
beard,
does make me look a little more Middle Eastern.
Mm-hmm.
I also had a shirt on that said, "Thank God I'm an atheist."
Right.
And
there's a couple of reasons why you were randomly selected.
And I said, "What? Like, why was I stopped?" And he says, "Just random selection." And for all I know, it was. I cannot tell.
My initial reaction to him being randomly selected at the airport was that he was Middle Eastern looking, because he definitely looks Middle Eastern to me, but also especially when he's fully bearded. But I forgot about the "Thank God I'm an Atheist" shirt. That probably has something to do with it too.
That's just...
But I viewed that as a racist moment, and you viewed it as a random selection, which is it's moments like that reminds me you're white, because I stare at you and I don't think of you as a white person.
The biggest indicator that I'm white is the way you and I both reacted to Get Out.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second, because that changed. That was a hard hit for me.
Yeah.
So because
that's
of
when she knew she was married to a white man.
I haven't thought of you. I've never thought of you as white, even though I know your family and everything like that, and I grew up around you. I don't think of you as white. Plus, you grew up around black kids. We all had the same friends, and I just thought of you as a mixed kid.
Yeah. Well, Amanda Seals makes a distinction between a white person and somebody who happens to be white.
Right.
I definitely don't cape for being white.
Yeah.
So.
When flash forward all these years and we're watching Get Out, we've now been together at this point probably 15, 16 years.
Yeah.
Plus we've known each other since we were 15.
Yeah.
And we get to the end of Get Out.
And I know about police brutality. I understand that it's a problem. But
when that cop
pulled up, I was relieved. I was like, "Oh, thank God, the cops are here!"
And I was like, "Oh no,
the cops are here!"
And we discovered that in conversation after, right?
Yeah.
And I was stressed out in that moment.
It's the brilliance of that movie, man.
That movie made us have a conversation that I don't think we even realized we never had, or at least I didn't realize we had never had it.
Yeah.
I guess because of my experience with the police, growing up in Long Beach, being a mixed black kid, I view the police as a danger to me and my folks.
Yeah.
So when that cop car pops up and I go, "Oh no," and you feel relief, I feel like you and I don't speak the same language in that moment. Like, I don't understand how to get through that moment with you, because I was just like, "Oh, fuck. Yeah. I married a white dude."
Yeah.
And until that moment, I never knew you were white.
Just completely different experiences. That's white privilege. I have no fear of the cops.
I'm definitely more aware of your white privilege things now because of that, but I legit never realized it before. It was insane that it took that long for me to pick up on it.
Yeah.
Because I just decided there's no way that that I would end up with a white person. You just happened to be the one that I fell for after months and months of us driving to school together.
Yep.
But yeah, that was actually a pretty big deal, I think, because it pointed out the differences between us. And there's times like I've come to the point that I've started to admit it, but before I didn't used to admit it, that in black spaces sometimes I'm really aware of you all of a sudden, like, oh shit, I ended up with a white dude.
When we were at Smart, Funny, and Black.
Yeah, so I've played this clip on the show before.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I did. So for those of you who haven't heard this episode, I played a clip from when Tree and I went to Smart, Funny, and Black, which was a comedy show that's put on by Amanda Seales. At the time we used to go, it was a local show at a small comedy joint. Yeah. Now it's this nationwide tour thing or whatever, which we can never afford to get tickets for anymore. But we used to go for $10. We used to go for $10 a show. And one time Amanda gets up on stage and she says, we're going to do this exercise or whatever. Can I get a white person to come on stage? And there's always a couple white people in the audience, but nobody raised their hand. So Tree raises his hand. He gets pulled up. And as soon as he gets on stage, she says, "Excuse me, sir, are you a white man?" Yeah. Because she sees it in his face the same way I see it. And I felt so fucking validated in that moment that I've been telling you your whole goddamn life that you did not code as white. And I just like excitedly jumped up and started screaming, "I fucking told you. Thank you. I've been telling them that shit his whole life."
But y'all were both wrong.
But I'm telling you, your face tells a story that your experience doesn't.
Yeah, I know.
And so she looks at him and says that he can't be the person for this experiment because while he may think of himself as white, the world sees him differently.
Yeah.
And so she dismissed him from the stage. And he didn't get to participate in the stage thing. So he comes and sits back down.
Not before I got a hug from Wayne Brady.
You did get a hug from Wayne Brady.
Yep.
And so for me, that was a big moment because for me, always telling you that you don't look white, I don't think meant anything to you until finally somebody else saw you the way I saw you.
Yeah.
But you were disappointed that you didn't get to participate in the moment.
Yeah, I wanted to play. It was fun. It's fucking Wayne Brady up there. He's gonna sing to me.
Yeah, that would have been fun. But it's just like even after all these years with you, there's times I just don't understand how you are the way that you are, looking the way that you look.
Yeah. Well, I don't do any of the things like you talk about code switching. I don't code switch ever.
That's true. You don't.
I never do.
You don't have any basis for it. Like even if, like the only way you could really code switch is if you did it in a very culturally appropriating type of way, because like you grew up around black kids. If all of a sudden you started doing, stereotypical things, it wouldn't come from a real place. So yeah, you don't have any code switch. You don't even code switch in like a professional to regular tree. Like you don't do that at all. You're inappropriate across the board.
Across the board inappropriate. Pretty much.
He is a college professor, a molder of young minds, and he is always inappropriate.
I have curbed my inappropriateness more and more over the years, though.
But it's usually triggered off an event. Usually something is the thing that makes you start to shift. Because other than that, you don't like authority. Yeah. You don't like to be told to behave a certain way.
I hate authority.
And so when something happens that...
Which you would think I should hate the cops, but...
Right. Yeah, you are so backwards.
It's not... It's abuse of authority that I hate.
Right.
It's not just authority. I recognize authorities over me, but I don't like it when people think they have more power over you than they actually do.
But I think also, in general, you think there are some professional guidelines that you do think is an over extension of authority in terms of codes of conduct and behavior and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there's times that, say, a student is triggered by something you say, and it's brought up to you, oh, maybe I am supposed to be more whatever, and you've made adjustments that way, but you don't like it.
Well, like at Porterville, it was cussing. They wanted me to stop cussing in class.
In a public institution, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, well, that's who the fuck I am.
Right. And you've done research on using cussing in classrooms to make students pay attention. Yeah. You also know the research about intelligence levels and things like that.
It's simple vocabulary. You learn more words, you got a better vocabulary.
Right.
You're afraid to say some fucking words? Get out of here. That shit's nonsense.
But it's been strange. And I think over the course, like, you tell me what you think, because over the course of this last year, as I've probably talked about race more than I ever have, even though it's pretty much always been my deal,
It hasn't changed much as far as I'm concerned.
You don't notice a difference?
Nope. You've been talking about race since we were 15.
That's true. I guess so.
It has always been a topic of conversation for us.
Yeah,
it
I guess
has never not been. That's why this is fun for you.
But what I don't understand is how did it take so long for me to pick up on you being white?
Again, because I don't think race is clearly defined. And people see ethnicity first, right?
Yeah.
And they don't get the whole story. I mean, I had a student who she's Indian, born in India, but adopted like I was by white people.
Right.
And she is white.
She's transracial.
But even that doesn't actually make sense to me. She's just she's ethnically one thing,
but culturally another.
Culturally something completely different. But I guess again, because you have to have the ethnic component in order to be viewed. She would never be viewed as white, even though like
I imagine her close social circle kind of thinks of her as white.
Yeah.
But whereas someone like me, who code switches on a regular basis, has a racially ambiguous face, I have a show called Militantly Mixed. It's about mixed raceness, and yet I don't have a definable race. Like, my skin color, my face doesn't code any particular race.
Yeah.
And it really depends on what someone's expectations of me when they look at me, that determines what they think my race is.
Yeah, people are just guessing when they come.
Yeah, they're just guessing.
Like I said, when I first saw you, I was like, what the fuck is all that? How did you...
You've never said it to me like that before.
It's nonsense. Stick to one thing.
One thing.
Pick a lane, girl.
But like you, there's only a few different ethnic groups that people think you are. They usually think you're like Yugoslavian because at the time we had a lot of Yugoslavians on the Kings basketball team.
Yeah.
Peja Stojakovic and Vlade Divac.
I thought I was Jewish.
People thought you were Jewish. I thought you were Jewish. So it's mostly like Eastern European or Middle Eastern as the options.
Yeah.
When I started to actually hang out with more Middle Eastern folks, if they would see a picture of you, first thing they would say to me is he Middle Eastern? Mm. I even had a Persian friend who, first thing she said to me was, is he Persian? I was like, no, he's half Arabic. And she's like, oh, sure, because he looks Persian. I was like, but the other half is white. She was like, oh, okay, now that makes sense. Because your coloring for her coded closer to Persian than Middle Eastern. And so, like, now I think people are probably more surprised that your last name doesn't reflect that you're Middle Eastern than... Yeah. But I think just by looking at you, people would accept it. And I think especially now that as you've gotten older, you've looked to me more and more Middle Eastern than...
I honestly don't know. I can't...
Yeah.
I just see a white boy in the... No.
You see a white boy in the mirror?
I don't really. But...
Can you at least detect the things that people are saying about you?
Of course. Like, I see my ethnicity in my face, but... Again, it's just never, ever been an issue for me in any way.
What about when we saw your half-brother for the first time on the Palestinian side? Because you look vaguely like your biological father, but not enough. Coloring probably more than anything. But when you saw your half-brother for the first time, and you guys look a lot alike, did that do anything to you?
Nope.
It really didn't, did it?
He's like the spit of me too. Because
you guys look so.
No, but not even just that, right? He's full. He's full.
They're both of their parents are from relatively the same villages and things like that. So 100% Palestinian.
Yeah, but he has pretty much the same skin tone as I do.
You've got very similar skin tones, except for his is probably a little bit more olivey.
Yeah.
Where yours has a little bit of pink in there a bit.
Pink?
You got a little bit of pink in your face and stuff.
Okay.
But your physical shape, like your body, even though you're taller, your body is very similar.
Honestly, that stuff didn't do anything.
Your face looks so similar.
It just didn't. I mean, I was expecting to see somebody who looked similar to me. I'm going to see my biological father and siblings.
Yeah.
If they didn't look anything like me, that would have been weird.
Yeah.
So I expected similarities.
Because you don't have any physical similarities with your white side.
Yeah.
Like you guys don't look like or anything like that.
Yeah.
For me, the experience was probably far bigger of a deal than for you.
It was a huge thing for you. Honestly, part of it was like, I think you really wanted to meet them, and I could have cared less.
Right. When I gave you the information to decide if you wanted to see him, I wasn't telling you to contact necessarily. I was saying I found him so that if you wanted to learn, you could.
Yeah.
Because up until that point, it had been kept from you. And I thought, I personally had a problem with that information being kept from you and you not being raised.
Yeah. Well,
with
for
access.
me, though, it's like the big issue was, and I think a lot of adopted people feel this way, is when you're raised by somebody your whole life and they've been good to you your whole life, it feels almost like a betrayal to even want to even be curious about your biological father, who had zero impact in my life for the majority of my life.
Had you been fully abandoned, I would have agreed with that thought and thought, yeah, we never have to find them. But because your mother had told me she had said that unless basically he changed his religion and married her, you weren't going to be a part of his life, I felt that, and because I knew he continued to contact your mother for a couple of years after you were born, it made me feel like that was something that was robbed of both of you. And that's why that's part of why I had so much curiosity. Yeah. It's probably not unrealistic to think my curiosity, like deep down, had a lot to do with, please validate for me that he is a mixed person. Yeah. You know, there's probably some of that too. When we did meet him, the big deal for me was kind of some of the stuff that he was talking about, like culturally, the things you would have had access to that you missed out on. And because culture is such a big deal in my family, I felt a kind of way about it. Like I did feel that you were robbed of sort of richness of culture, access to food, you know, all kinds of different things that you didn't grow up around.
Yeah, sure.
Language, things like that.
Yeah.
When we met your half-siblings, though...
I probably also would have been being taught Islam and Christianity at the same time, which probably would have been
healthier for you.
Because just being taught Christianity was a nightmare.
But when we finally met your half-siblings, though, the big deal there was just seeing that you were similar to some people.
Yeah.
Because they're fun. I mean, they're funny.
They're great.
They're really sweet, too. They are more a match in personality to you from my experience of you than your brothers you grew up around. Like they seem more like you to me than the ones that we know well.
Maybe.
And for me, it was just like, for me who don't have people who look like me running around the planet, it was exciting to see people who looked just the fuck like you.
Yeah.
Like that was really weird for me. I loved it. I loved all the things I loved learning how powerful genetics were in comparison to nurture where you were concerned, because there were so many fucking similarities.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
So for me, that was an experience. But
and all I really cared about was, do you got heart disease? Do you got...
like, why do I have bad knees?
Yeah.
But there were genetic things that we learned, like you all had that same jaw situation.
No, they've got overbites.
Oh, they got the flip of yours.
They've got underbites and I've got overbite.
But you all need the same solution to fix the problem.
A reverse solution, yeah.
Yeah, and then your knees and things like that were similar too. And I will say, after all these years, with hindsight, it probably was a completely selfish endeavor on my part, because I had so much curiosity and you didn't.
You were the impetus to all of it.
Curious.
Because right now, if you weren't here, do you think I would have ever found my biological?
No, you probably wouldn't have never even asked your sister for his name.
I never would have.
Even as she was looking for her biological father, you didn't have curiosity?
I have zero care. My dad's my dad. That's the guy I love.
Well, that's what I love about your distinction, too, is that you have a biological father and you get a dad.
Yeah.
And your dad is the guy who you love.
He's awesome.
And when your biological father does get into these moods where he is like, you know... he wants
somebody to
you
call
to be
him on
his son.
Father's Day.
You can't possibly be his son because you don't know him that way.
No,
He's just a guy you share genetics with.
Yeah.
And that's a different experience for me, because in my case, I was raised around both of my parents, maybe not always together or at the same time, but I can't deny their influences. And I can tell when I'm like my dad and when I'm like my mom. Like I can see throughout my personality where they are.
Yeah, sure.
And getting a chance to finally, like, you are such an anomaly in your family to me. Like,
How so?
you don't seem like them. Like, their sense of humor is different. You're always
What?
like that,
No,
the one that's different for me.
no. We have very
I
similar
mean, your
senses
your
of
brother, your
humor.
youngest brother, is hella funny, but to
Brandon's
me, in a totally
hilarious.
different way than you are.
I don't know about that. But he's definitely hilarious. My dad is funny too.
Your dad is funny, but he's
He's got
like,
a good sense of humor.
your dad's funny. It speaks directly to me. Like,
Yeah.
he's a mean funny. You're not necessarily a mean funny, but you find mean funny funny.
Yeah, I do. I don't think being mean is fun.
But I like the way your dad is funny. But like, your half brother on the
Yeah.
other side is very similar to us in sense of humor, and so there were things for me that were just clicking a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And probably because I needed it to, but there were things that backed up my feeling.
Yeah.
My very selfish feelings to force you to be a mixed person. But still, even as we're sitting here talking, like, we're just on different sides of the thing. Like, it's so weird. Even all these years we've been together, it's always weird to talk to you about this stuff because you seem so disconnected to it. And it is everything to me.
Yeah, no. I just can't. Again, though, it hasn't affected me.
Yeah.
I just haven't seen anybody ever discriminate against me. I haven't seen. I'm not saying that shit doesn't happen. Obviously, that shit happens to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen it happen to me, so I've never really been like worried about my race or needed to concern myself about how I present to people or anything like that. I just be me, and it's been fine for me, which is privilege.
It's a lot of privilege
just
because
lucky.
even in your, like, when you were a teenager and you guys would, fuck around and do vandalism and things like that, and that you have that one story about being stopped by the cops.
Yeah.
Your situation, and every time me and my friends got stopped by the cops when I was in Long Beach, our stories are different.
But
You had
me,
black kids,
3 black kids,
Asian kid,
1 white kid, and 1 Asian kid.
and you all made it home safe, and that fucking baffles the shit out of me.
So why did we make it home safe?
Could it just be that, I mean, maybe it was a military town, and so people were used to people of all different races?
We hadn't really done anything. They didn't see us do anything, right?
They didn't see you. They didn't catch you in the act of anything?
Also, it's Sacramento.
I mean, Sacramento, there's police brutality there too, but I don't understand. It's so different because my dynamic was getting picked up by the police, all the black kids going to the Mexican neighborhood, getting dropped off and getting beat the fuck up, and me going home because I was pale.
But this is, I mean, you're generalizing across all police.
Yeah, I know.
All police don't behave the same way. Some of them are actually trying to be good people. They didn't have anything.
I guess. It just makes me uncomfortable to even say that.
We could have got stopped by a different couple of cops.
Right.
And some bad shit could have gone down.
Right. Because there were more black kids in your circle than there were white kids in your circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Just our experiences are so different that there's times when I feel like you have some naivety about the way police are, and I think you look at me as having naivety about how the police are.
I don't have naivety about how police are, but I don't generalize to all the police. I've seen police shoot fucking black people for no fucking reason. I know that shit's out there. I know that tons and tons of, well, everybody is moved by their own biases, their implicit biases and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And that when they have really negative attitudes towards certain groups of people, that those implicit biases are going to come out. They're going to harm people that they shouldn't be harming. I know that shit's out there. I'm not ignoring any of that stuff. This has never happened to me. I've never seen it live. I've never seen it in person. But I know it's out there, and I know it's bad, and I know that we need to be working against it.
I will say that there's been a shift with you, though, where there was a time when I would react to something related to the police, and you would tell me to kind of relax or calm down, whereas now you get as angry as me in almost every situation.
It's nonstop now.
Yeah. Well, the news is finally
Sure.
available about
Sure.
it.
And I didn't have,
You didn't have the same access to seeing
And I
that kind of
didn't
stuff that
s-
I saw.
yeah.
Whereas I grew up in Long Beach during the crazy reign of the LAPD
Yeah.
and, you know, Daryl Gates and shit like that.
Yeah.
So it is different. Well, okay. This is going to be a tough one, and I'm really curious to see what you would say because I've never asked you the question. But the way I end every show is that I ask my guests, what do they love most about being mixed?
You know what? You're going to laugh at this is that there's so many, there's so much disdain right now for white people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can actually hide in my mixedness and be like, well, I'm not white.
No, but that makes sense.
Look at my face.
You're like, thank goodness Sharmane figured out I was mixed, so I don't have to be white right now.
I think if like there's times where that I actually don't mind that. But it's so hypocritical on my side.
It is, but I'll
But
allow
just
it.
because I have this ethnicity that puts me in a like you're not just white,
Right.
then I don't know. Yeah, there's been times where I'm just like, well, I'm glad people don't view me as just white
Right.
because
Honestly, and I think you would agree with me, if you presented more white than you do, you and I never would have been a thing, no matter how funny you are.
No, my sense of humor would have won you over no matter what.
I mean, you're